Ja, можу говорити українською мовою. I can speak it a little bit. If you give me a shot of Ukrainian moonshine, I think I can speak it very fluently.
Before we continue, we invite you to follow our channel, the only American show reporting live from Ukraine every day.
Satellite images yesterday placed near President Putin's summer residence north of Moscow have revealed that there is a new air defense system near his home. Let's go to Joseph Lindsley in Ukraine. Joe, is this because Ukraine has become better at using drones and they strike now deeper inside Russia?
Bob, hello from Kyiv, and yes, I think so. I mean, the fact that we can, able to spot where such defenses are, even though they obviously go to great lengths to hide it. But we've seen so much, really, in the past year, but at increasing rates, Ukrainians have used Ukrainian-made drones to hit very valuable targets deep within Russia, much further away from Ukraine than Moscow and then Putin's sort of palatial residence outside of Moscow. I mean, Ukrainians have gone more than 1,000 kilometers with their drones or via drone to hit Russian oil refineries deep into Russia. So this is no wonder, and it's I think we see the Ukrainian intel is with minimal resources they've been able to achieve a lot. And one advantage that Ukrainians have is that if you're a native Russian speaker, it's very difficult to pronounce the Ukrainian language. But Ukrainians can pronounce Russian easily. They all grew up studying it. It was required during Soviet times and during the times of the czars. And so this is kind of gives Ukrainians this little bit of a superpower. And so, it's for sure there are Ukrainian operatives throughout Russia working to find these places, find air defense, find targets to hit, and to sort of in that guerrilla way to work for victory. And another indication of the how Ukrainians have succeeded even when they've been limited. I mean, the United States will not give permission for Ukrainians to use American-made weapons to hit anything on Russian soil unless it's near Kharkiv, sort of near the border. But we see, it's very clear now that in the Black Sea, Ukraine has a victory in the Black Sea. The Russian Black Sea fleet is destroyed. Now, of course, it can be rebuilt and they can get, stronger again. But even yesterday, Ukrainian drones went to Russia's new naval headquarters in the on the coast of the Black Sea on Russian mainland. And so now they can even hit, the place that the Russians thought would be safe from Ukrainian attack. That is definitely not safe either from Ukrainian drones. And the Black Sea, it is empty of Russian ships. And this was a combination of using Ukrainian-made drones and also the Storm Shadow missiles from the United Kingdom and France. And they've made a huge difference. And so the U.S. still refuses to give permission for Ukrainians to sort of hit some of these long-range targets. But Ukrainians have to do it in a very inventive way. And meanwhile, President Zelensky was in the UK. There was a meeting of European leaders with the new Prime Minister, Sir Keir Starmer. They met at Chequers. Of course, Chequers evokes memories of the history of Winston Churchill, holding such meetings during World War II. And President Zelensky really made a push for the new government in the UK to give permission for Ukraine to use missiles, not just little drones, but actual missiles to hit targets within Russia. And I don't think if they had that permission that they would use these tools to hit Putin's residence or bunker. I mean, I think they would go after the air bases from which Russia launches its attacks upon Ukrainian cities.
Yeah, there is permission to use Western weapons to strike across the border into Russia, but Ukraine has to limit this to military targets, right?
Well, and that permission is only for a small corridor, no more than about 100 kilometers, only around the Kharkiv and Sumy regions of Ukraine. So what the Russians have done since that permission was given, Russians have adapted. And so now they're able, they move their launch points 100 kilometers away or more. And, the recent big attacks, for example, last week, came from Russian air bases deep within the Russian Federation, and the U.S. still refuses at all, to give permission for that at all. So the permission given from the U.S., the lifting of restrictions, has been very minimal, and that was only due to the carnage that was happening. I mean, Kharkiv City was almost destroyed. It was really terrible in May, and Zelensky and the Ukrainian people and people who support Ukraine had a clear message to Washington, and that worked. But now we sort of lost, momentum has been lost on that. And I saw there was a Ukrainian, probably in his 20s, at some summit in Washington with a meeting with John Kirby, the Pentagon spokesman. And he said to the Pentagon spokesman, he said, if you say Ukraine can join NATO after victory, then why would Russia ever want to let Ukraine win? If Russia doesn't want Ukraine in NATO, then they have, when you say that Ukraine can't join until after the war. By the way, the White House doesn't say victory; they just say after the war. Then Russia has an incentive to keep the war going. And I can tell that John Kirby cares about Ukraine, but he said, Russia is suffering big casualties, and we're going to stick with Ukraine as long as it takes. And then NATO can, then Ukraine can join NATO. But from the Ukrainian perspective, well, that's kind of useless, because if you look at so many indications here, despite the good news in the Black Sea, the situation on the ground is incredibly difficult. And even if Russia has enormous casualties, Ukraine does too. And Ukraine is a much smaller country. Mm. And, every single able-bodied man in Ukraine is preparing to the reality that you're going to have to fight. And because there's really no other way about it. And I think there is, among people who support Ukraine, there's obviously everyone's talking about the U.S. election and, who's going to be better. There's big debates. I think most Americans who support Ukraine, they're not happy with the Biden administration, but they still think that that's a better option at this point, although there is a growing contingent of people saying they can't get much worse. And that's definitely the opinion I hear from Ukrainians. Most Ukrainians with whom I speak are now saying that they don't see any hope if the current administration or the current sort of policy people are in charge, because even if Ukraine's still holding on, but what everyone is seeing that the trajectory is not looking good. Mm-hmm. And so more and more Ukrainians are saying, and this upsets, I know, many Americans, more and more Ukrainians are saying they think even Trump might be better because they don't see any hope with the current policy right now.
That's very interesting. We get lots of feedback on our conversations from our listeners, Joseph. Let me squeeze in a couple of texts here. Does Joseph Lindsley speak Ukrainian fluently? Do you?
Well, I can understand it well. Я можу говорити українською мовою. I can speak it a little bit. If you give me a shot of Ukrainian moonshine, I think I can speak it very fluently.
Yeah. And this is my favorite question that came in for you. Is Joseph Lindsley married? Not yet, but I think that could happen here in Ukraine. The listeners, they feel they know you. They're curious, Joe.
Who asked that question?
I have a phone number here, but we can talk later. And we'll check in with you on Monday. Thank you.
Thank you for introducing Ukraine on your social media pages. That's very important, that much more people can get more information about the situation here and how everybody can help Ukraine to stay stronger and to save all the world.
Что он сказал?
Well, which side are you on?
На чьей ты стороне?
Come on now. Oh, which side are you on?
На чьей ты стороне?